Today we bring you an in-depth examination of what may prove to be the most consequential health challenge the British royal family has faced in generations. In February 2024, barely 17 months after finally ascending the throne at the age of 73, King Charles III received a cancer diagnosis. The manner in which Buckingham Palace chose to reveal, frame, and manage this news offers a revealing window into the workings of the 21st century monarchy when it finds itself under the harshest possible spotlight. The announcement came on the evening of February 5, 2024. In a short, meticulously worded statement, the palace confirmed that, during a routine procedure for benign prostate enlargement performed 10 days earlier, doctors had discovered an unrelated form of cancer. The king had already begun a program of regular treatments. Doctors were described as optimistic, and Charles himself was said to be wholly positive about his care and eager to resume full public duties as soon as possible. Notably, the statement made clear that the cancer was not prostate cancer, yet offered no further specifics about type, site, or stage. What followed was not merely the story of one man's illness, but a carefully choreographed institutional response designed to preserve public confidence, constitutional continuity, and a measure of royal privacy in an age that demands ever greater openness. If you wish to understand precisely how the palace navigated this crisis, how it differs from the secrecy of previous generations, and what the episode tells us about the future of the crown, stay with us as we unpack every layer of this extraordinary moment. The first clue that King Charles intended to handle health matters differently from his predecessors appeared on January 17, 2024. In an almost unprecedented move, Buckingham Palace publicly announced that the king would shortly undergo a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate, benign prostatic hyperplasia. Royal medical bulletins have historically been sparse, cryptic, or non-existent, yet here was a deliberate decision to speak openly. The stated aim was to encourage men across the country experiencing similar urinary symptoms to seek medical advice. In a single stroke, a private health matter was transformed into a national public health campaign. Observers immediately recognized this as a departure from the approach of Queen Elizabeth II, who had cultivated an image of almost superhuman resilience and revealed virtually nothing about her own declining health until the very end. The procedure itself took place on January 26th at the London Clinic, a discreet private hospital favored by the royals. The king was discharged 3 days later, and initial reports suggested everything had gone according to plan. Then, 10 days after that seemingly routine intervention, came the bombshell. The February 5th statement was a masterclass in controlled disclosure. The palace could not conceal the diagnosis entirely. Treatment would inevitably force the king to withdraw from public engagements for an indefinite period, and rumors would have spiraled uncontrollably. Instead, officials opted for limited candor. They confirmed cancer, emphasized early detection during an unrelated procedure, highlighted medical optimism and the king's positive outlook, and stressed that Charles had personally chosen to share the news, to prevent speculation, and to help others affected by the disease. By framing the announcement as an act of royal agency rather than forced revelation, the palace retained narrative control. Crucially, they drew a bright line. The king would postpone all public-facing duties, but would continue to carry out his constitutional responsibilities as head of state. The famous red boxes containing state papers would still arrive at whichever residence he chose for recuperation. Weekly audiences with the prime minister, conducted remotely if necessary, would continue, and official documents would still require the royal signature. In other words, the monarchy could appear diminished in the public eye without becoming constitutionally paralyzed. This distinction mattered enormously. Britain has no written constitution that explicitly details what happens when a monarch becomes seriously ill, but contingency planning is extensive. The Councillors of State mechanism exists precisely for such moments. Currently, the eligible councillors are Queen Camilla, Prince William, Prince Harry, Prince Andrew, Princess Beatrice, Princess and Prince Edward. With Harry and Andrew no longer working royals, the practical burden falls primarily on Camilla, William, and, to a lesser extent, the younger generation. The palace took care to signal that a smooth delegation of duties was already in train. thereby heading off any impression of institutional vacuum. Historically, the House of Windsor has treated royal illness as something close to state secret. King George VI's lung cancer in the early 1950s was described to the public merely as a structural abnormality requiring resection. The truth emerged only after his death. Queen Elizabeth II's final months were marked by episodic mobility problems, a formulation so vague that many Britons were genuinely shocked when she died in September 2022. Against that backdrop, Charles's willingness to confirm cancer at all, however carefully hedged, represents a generational shift. It reflects both evolving public expectations and the king's own long-standing interest in health and complementary medicine. Yet the refusal to name the specific cancer shows that the instinct for privacy remains deeply ingrained. The modern palace seeks a middle path, enough transparency to satisfy a 21st-century audience, enough reserve to protect the mystique and dignity of the crown, yet the absence of detail also fueled intense speculation. Every phrase in the palace statement was dissected. What did optimistic really mean? Was the cancer localized or metastatic? Had it been caught at stage I or stage 4? Tabloids and broadsheets alike wheeled out oncologists to discuss survival rates for every conceivable malignancy except prostate cancer. The palace's silence on specifics, far from quelling curiosity, created an information vacuum that gossip and conjecture eagerly filled. For a brief, surreal period, both the king and the future queen were simultaneously receiving cancer treatment, an unprecedented double blow that placed extraordinary strain on the Prince of Wales. Prince Harry's response added another layer of complexity. Informed personally by his father shortly before the public announcement, the Duke of Sussex flew from California to London for a brief visit lasting less than 30 hours. Father and son met privately at Clarence House, but Harry reportedly did not see his brother William, underlining that some familial wounds remain raw despite the gravity of the moment. Princess and, long regarded as the hardest-working royal, simply absorbed still more engagements into her already punishing diary. Her stoical, no-nonsense approach provided a reassuring constant amid the uncertainty. Medical experts have been careful to emphasize that without knowing the precise diagnosis, prognosis remains impossible to gauge accurately. The fact that the cancer was discovered incidentally during a procedure for an unrelated condition is generally encouraging. Asymptomatic, early-stage malignancies detected in this way often carry better outcomes. In meeting that challenge with a blend of openness and restraint, with operational contingency planning and deliberate messaging, Buckingham Palace has offered a revealing portrait of a 1,000-year-old institution attempting to adapt to the demands and expectations of the 21st century while preserving the essence of what makes it unique. King Charles's cancer diagnosis is far more than a personal health crisis. It is a defining test for a modern monarchy learning, sometimes painfully, how to balance transparency with mystery, vulnerability with authority, and the very human frailties of its members with the enduring symbolism of the crown itself.